would be willing to divide that equitably among themselves. So the smaller counties would have the same amount as the larger counties. And that number shook out to $3,370 and I think 60-some cents. As they were considering this, I thought that there were some good points that were made, and that was that the county has been working with NorCal for over 30 years, and they would want to continue to work with NorCal to service their local EMS agency. We are truly a rural EMS system. We're not dominated by a large county or a metropolitan area. Actually, I made the comment to Mr. Egan the other day, Lassen is actually the big dog with 6 counties that we serve. We were the largest county. We reflected on the fact that each of the counties have benefited from this program that we are now being required to pay back these dollars on. And there hasn't been an increase to the counties for the services that we have provided for 4 years. And so that's the issue that is before each of the 6 counties. Are the counties willing to take on this $3,370 item in order for us to come to an agreement with CDPH and hopefully put this matter behind us.
Thank you, Dan. Question?
I don't have any questions. I mean, NorCal does a good job. I mean, you have to have them to have a medical service. You have to have them. And it's terrible what the CDPH has done to us and done to NorCal.
To us.
Tom, question?
No. Is there any other alternatives?
No. I mean, the board, which I sit on, has beat this board. As long as I've been on the board, and I don't remember how long I've been there, I'm gonna say 3 or 4 years, I think. It's been a continuous issue. We've tried everything, we've gone every direction, we've litigated it over and over, and, you know, we've asked for, you know, to erase it, and we can't seem to do that. But NorCal owns nothing but the tables, chairs, you know, coffee machines, and there's nothing to get. So, I mean, but they still insist on the money, and the state says they gotta have it. The feds give it to the state handed it out back after 9/11. And, there is no other option. There's 2 options. The county take this increase of 3,300 whatever, which is very little, or NorCal will shut the door. There's no other option. Those are the 2 options.
We would hope that if each of the counties, and I haven't, and I'm not gonna fast forward on this, but if each of the counties can agree to this, it gives us a little bit of a major sigh of relief.
Right.
And an opportunity to grow the agency. And, you know, I don't want to make any promises, but I would hope that we could grow the agency and come back to the counties and say, you know, that 3370, let's
It's
go for
hard
that.
to grow NorCal EMS and get other counties involved because you got this black cloud hanging over it. So people are just waiting for this to disappear. And as far as whatever we did, well, you know, we used to own a building, sold that, went to lease another building, found a cheaper one, moved to it. Dan, along with all employees, have taken staff cuts and some salaries. Some staff are gone, I think. And I mean, the staff has been great. They've more than did their part. So I mean, the $3,300 for us to continue with NorCal, and if NorCal is not there, it would be Sierra Sacramento, who would have to probably go to. They are based out of Sacramento. They are a whole different type of EMS. They do not understand or, you know, cater to rural America, like Lassen, Modoc, Sierra, Plymouth. It would not be a good move. And so.
Well, we need a motion for this? Yeah.
Let's get some feedback from the public. I see this young man over here.
What has the response been from the smaller counties? Are they game with splitting equally with the larger counties that bill?
I
My
keep
name's
checking-
Paul.
I keep checking my phone because Sierra County's issue is up this morning, and Supervisor Adams and one of the ambulance providers was gonna be at that meeting. They told me they didn't need me to be there, they felt confident in the issue. They would be the smallest county and would have the relatively highest amount of money that.
Because I
would be
fear
paid.
our state's gonna go up in this.
Pardon me?
I fear our amount's gonna go up.
Well, the issue is that it's an equal amount for each
You know,
county.
all the counties, no matter what the size are, get paid the same amount. Lassen County currently, Lassen County currently pays around $25,000, so we're gonna be paying about $29,000. That's a membership fee, it goes toward the operation.
Right.
As far as individual, ambulance is picking it, it's not gonna affect what they charge, what the hospital charges. I think there is a fee that will come back from them, is that right?
Well, the board will discuss that at the next meeting. But this is the big issue that we need to deal with right now.
I think you have a question?
I just want to know what fund this is coming out of, and if this is, you're going to hear a lot, don't laugh, Bob, you're going to hear a lot more about the money all year long and forever. Do you
I'm
know
looking
the
forward to
fund?
it.
It's our money. It's not funny. It's our money. Do you have the fund that this is coming out of, and is the money there?
Melanie?
Eileen, I don't know the fund number, but it's public health realignment. We pay the dues every year. It's part of our rural health commitment from public health realignment dollars.
Does anybody here know what fund it comes out of? 167. Thank you. Oh, you're here. 167, thank you.
Did that answer your question, Mrs. Spencer?
I'm going to look it up and see if you have money, which you should have done before you came to this meeting, if you're going to vote on this.
Whatever. It's not, I'm not a dictator, the five of us run it, not me.
Do you know if we have money?
Do what?
Do you know if we have the money to do
I'm
this
sure we
increase?
can come up with $3,000.
That's what I wanted you to say.
I have no problem assuring something this important, somewhere in the budget, we can find the money.
Thank you, that's what I wanted to
It's an
hear.
extremely small amount of money, and compared to the benefits we get out of this organization.
I'm not against it, I'm not against it, I'm all for it.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else? You guys pretty easy. Eric, you had no comments? Nothing?
Well, all that I had, is really just to kind of tag on to what Dan had, was I spoke with SEMSA yesterday. They weren't able to be here, but had they been here, they were going to show their support for what NorCal does provide to the county as well as them.
And all of our providers have been notified about this. Okay, thank you. We got a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the job you do, Dan.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming up. Made it easier on me. Okay. Now we can move to our 11 o'clock item, audit. See Diane? Audit.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we have a presentation of the 12, 13
You're gonna have to pronounce his name, I'm not gonna try.
annual audit. I'll let him pronounce that. Welcome.
Welcome, give your name for the recorder.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Powell, members of the board. My pleasure to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to share the audited financial statements with you this morning. My name is Fausto Hinojosa. I'm a CPA and a certified fraud examiner, the managing partner at Price Page & Company, CPA firm out of Clovis. And we were selected as the new auditors for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2013 by the County of Lassen. So again, we appreciate the opportunity to be of service, to be here this morning to share with you the results of the audit. As I was preparing this morning, I think you've all got the audited financial statement. The the document there before you. As I was preparing, I just looked at the number of pages in the audited financial statements, and I think we're like at 110 pages. So obviously, it's not my intent this morning to cover all of those pages. My plan is to cover with you the auditor's opinion, which is going to be page 1, to briefly go through the financial statements, just to point out maybe a couple of key things within those financial statements, to identify maybe a couple of key items in the footnotes to those financial statements, and then finally to share with you also the 2 separate audit reports. An audit of your county includes 3 different auditors' opinions. It includes the opinion that we're going to briefly discuss here in a minute on the financial statements. There's also a report on internal control and compliance in accordance with government auditing standards. And finally, there is a report in accordance with OMB Circular A-133, the federal audit guidelines, because you receive so much federal money. So that's kind of the plan. Feel free to interrupt me as I'm talking if you have any questions, or if you prefer to wait until the end. However you wish to do that will work fine. So I'm going to start at page 1, which is our auditor's report. It's on the only thing that's really on our letterhead. This report's a little bit different from what it's been in prior years. The American Institute of CPAs issued new auditing standards that they call the clarified auditing standards. And so in order to clarify things, they took a report that was 5 paragraphs and they turned it into 10 paragraphs. And apparently that clarified some things. So it's a little bit longer than it used to be. There are a couple of good things in it. And so there at page 1, it talks about, first section says report on financial statements, basically identifying the financial statements that we are opining on as of June 30, 2013. The second section says management's responsibility. The third section says auditor's responsibility. So I'd like to take a minute just to briefly describe and discuss those responsibilities. That first section with respect to management's responsibility talks about it being management's responsibility to prepare and to fairly present the financial statements. Management is also responsible for the design, implementation, and maintenance of internal control. We're going to talk a little bit about internal control. The auditor's responsibility is to gather enough evidence to determine whether the financial statements are fairly stated in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Our job as auditors basically is to determine whether there are any whether there are any material errors or whether there is any fraud in financial statement numbers. And so that's our job. Those are the 2 things that we're looking for, errors and fraud. There was a statement on auditing standards that was issued a few years ago where the American Institute of CPAs made it clear that as CPAs, fraud was a significant component of what we were to look for. Some of that came as a result, you'll remember the Enron and some of that was happening where CPAs were not doing really a good enough job to apply audit procedures that were looking to detect that sort of thing. And so that has become more clear that that is within the scope of our responsibility. If you go to page 2, the top section says opinions. And so this obviously is the opinion paragraph, and this is the key paragraph, I think, in the auditor's report. And it says that, in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly the financial position, results of activities, etc. And so the key there is that presented fairly in all material respects. This is an unmodified opinion, also known as a clean opinion. And so basically it says that, yes, in fact, these financial statements are presented in accordance with the accounting rules. Those accounting rules, again, are promulgated by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. So they set the rules, and it's the county's job then to comply with those rules, to account for things in accordance with those rules, to report things in accordance with those rules. Our job as auditors to determine, did you account properly for the financial transactions of the county in accordance with the rules, and did you present those things in accordance with those rules? And our opinion states that, yes, in fact, the county is in compliance with those rules. You have a clean or an unmodified opinion. So I'm going to actually then jump over to the financial statements. And there are 2 sets of financial statements. Again, a lot of information here, but there's something that is called the government-wide financial statements. Those start at page 19. And those take all of the county's funds, if you will, and kind of lump them together and create basically two columns. And so on page 19, you'll see those two columns. There's something called governmental activities, something called business type activities, and then the total column. In that governmental activities column is where all of your governmental funds are lumped together. And so very briefly here, just to describe this statement, it is a statement of net position. Basically, it's a balance sheet. So if you're in the private sector, that's what you can refer to it as, a balance sheet. And a balance sheet, as you know, lists the assets, the liabilities, and then the equity, or the fund balance, or in this case, it's called the net position. So the assets of the county as of June 30, 2013 for your governmental activities were about $91 million. What were the liabilities of the county? $7.2 million. So a strong financial position, right? The assets of 91 minus liabilities of 7, leaving $84 million of net position, equity, fund balance, however you want, whatever you want to call that. Now, even though you have $84 million of net position or of equity, $52 million of that is related to the capital assets of the county, streets, roads, bridges, buildings, etc. So that's not money that's sitting in the bank. Money that's sitting in the bank is right at the top here of the statement, which is about $29 million. So that is that statement. Over on pages 20 and 21 are a statement of activities, which is an income statement. That format I don't particularly like, and it's kind of tough to read, so I'm not going to spend time with it. It's required by the accounting standard setters, but I'm going to jump then over to pages 24 and 25. And here's where you can take a look by fund at the financial activity of the county, or the financial position rather. So this is again a balance sheet by fund. So if you looked at the general fund, that first column there on page 24, again you'll see assets, liabilities, and then the equity. You'll see that the general fund had assets of $10 million, liabilities of almost $2 million, so an equity position of $8 million. Of that $8 million, $4 million of that was unassigned or available for the county to expend on its services. Okay? So there are several other major funds. I'm not going to describe or discuss those. Those other funds are basically restricted monies, right? So the county really has very little leeway, if you will, with respect to what it's going to do with the funding inside of those other funds. And so that's why I'm just going to describe there the general fund. If you go over to pages 28 and 29, again, an income statement that's called a statement of revenues, expenses, changes, and fund balances. So in this income statement, by fund, you can see the general fund there again, revenues for the year of $16.4 million, expenses of 7.5, leaving a very positive $8.8 million. However, of that 8.8 that was left, 8.5 of that had to be transferred to other funds to cover costs within some of those other funds, because the funding that you're receiving, the restricted money that you're getting to have to do what you need to do isn't enough. Your general fund has to subsidize those other funds. So that's the information there on page 28. A lot of information in the footnotes. I'm just going to maybe point out a couple of them that might be of interest to you. On page 50, there is a extensive footnote on cash position and risks associated with cash, which you are very conservative with your cash. A lot of that is in LAIF, and then other in some treasury obligations that are not any concern, right? So very low risk. Let's see here. There is a detailed footnote on page 55 with respect to capital assets. So if you want to take a look at your capital asset activity, you know, what do we own, what have we added, what have we disposed of, etc. There's information that starts on page 55 with respect to that. I think those are the footnotes that are probably most significant. There's a footnote on page 61 that says employee retirement system. The significant thing about the PERS, employee retirement system, is that there's something very, there's a significant change that's going to happen here for the year ended June 30, 2016. So the current accounting rules don't require that the county report its share of the unfunded liability. So right now, PERS sends you a bill, you pay that bill, and you don't have a liability. However, the retirement system, as you might know, PERS is underfunded. So they have a liability, right? They have less assets than they have liabilities, actuarially accrued liabilities. So they don't have the money to pay that. So they send you a bill, you pay that bill, you don't report a liability currently. The accounting rules have changed, and so again, for the year ended June 30, 2015, rather, the county, as all other governmental agencies, are now going to have to report their share of that big liability, if that makes sense. So if currently PERS has $1 billion in assets but owes $1.5 billion, then that $500 million has to get allocated to all of the governments that are in that pool. So that is a significant change that's going to impact your balance sheet. You're going to have a big liability reported on your balance sheet with respect to retiree benefits that are unfunded. On page 63 is another, I think, footnote that might be of interest to you, and this is the other post-employment benefits. Your county is unique in that you pre-funded that liability. So if you look at the financial statements for most governments, I'd say probably 98% of them were not in a position to pre-fund their other post-employment benefit, the healthcare liability. But you did that, and so you actually have a small asset because you put money in, you earn some money on the money that you paid, and so you're actually in a very strong position with respect to that, to those retirement costs, which again is very, very rare. So I think that is it with respect to the to this report, the audited financial statements. There is a separate report called the single audit report that was issued, and this is details the audit of your federal money. So I very quickly want to go through that. And so again, it's a separate document. There are two reports there. One report is a audit report on internal control and compliance. And so our job again as auditors is not only to audit the numbers in the financial statements, but to gain an understanding of the internal control system. Are your systems in place over financial reporting, over disbursements, receipts, revenues, property tax collection, etc., payroll? Do you have internal control systems that reduce the risk of error and fraud? And so as a part of our audit, we need to gain an understanding about that, and then we make a determination as to what controls we want to test and how that might impact our audit process. And while we are obtaining that understanding and looking at controls, if we identify a significant deficiency in that internal control system, we're required to report that to you. The result of this report, though, basically states that we did not identify any significant deficiencies in the internal control system of the county, which is a good thing. On page 3 now is the third audit report. This is a specific report on compliance with respect to that federal money that you receive. So you receive a lot of federal grants. Federal government gives us a laundry list of requirements and says, auditor, I want you to go take a look at these 32 things. Make sure they comply with this, 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 and this. Some of that's eligibility, cost allocation, allowable costs, a whole lot of stuff. And so we take that laundry list and we go through and perform the audit to make sure that you complied with all of those things. And I'm pleased to report to you that the county complied in all material respects with those compliance requirements. So there were no deficiencies of compliance or of internal control related to your federal grants. And that's what that report states. So I think that concludes my presentation to you. I'm glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Well, this is probably for Richard. Is our net assets, like in a 5-year time frame, are they increasing, decreasing, where are they?
I haven't looked at the trend as far as the value, but I believe they're stated at book value.
Your net assets, I can actually tell you here. For this year under audit, they basically stayed pretty much even. You had like $8,500 decrease.
Okay.
So they pretty much stayed even.
So they're pretty level.
Yeah, pretty level. Yes. Overall, right.
Right.
Your general fund again had initially a. Let me get that number here again. So your general fund had revenues of $16.5 million almost, expenses of 7.6. So it was pretty good. But again, it had to take $8.5 million to send to the other funds.
Right.
So,
Basically, it looks pretty good.
Yeah, you still ended up in pretty good shape. There is a statement that I forgot to cover, which is a budget to actual statement. If you take a look at that statement, you'll see also that you expended less than you had budgeted, and you actually brought in a little bit more than you had budgeted, which is, I think as a CPA, you know, if I'm budgeting, I want to be conservative in my budgeting, and so that is what the county is doing. That's a good approach.
Okay, thank you. Anybody in public have any questions? No, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, how does Lassen County look at other counties? I'm assuming you do other counties.
We do other counties. Our firm is in Clovis, and so we are in the county of Fresno, which was a former audit client of ours, county of Tulare. We also do the county of Alpine up here, but counties up here are just doing a lot better than counties over in Central Valley and across the state. The way that you are managing your money, the fiscal responsibility that smaller counties like yourself are employing is commendable. So you're in a strong position. Now, I know that there's one county up here that is really struggling, but Lassen County and other counties that I'm familiar with up here that are just more fiscally conservative are in a good position, and certainly way much better position than counties that are in significant deficits that I'm not sure how they're going to sustain operations at those counties.
Well, thank you. That's good to hear from you.
Yeah.
I mean, we hear just the opposite so much that we don't know how to manage money, or fiscally broken, or whatever. Thank you for your presentation. If there's no more questions, we'll move on.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I want to apologize to staff. I see I missed C1, 10:30, planning and building services.
I want a double apology.
That was my fault. I take total responsibility. Somehow I just looked over it more. I apologize.
No problem.
I guess we have to open the public hearing.
Yeah, it was
Continue the public hearing.
continuing.
So we open it at 11:30.
You have before you, let's see.
I wonder why you're hanging around.
I can't get them out. It's just.
That's why it's in this big thick package here.
Okay, so, this is a proposed ordinance revision to Title 12 of Lassen County Code, Chapter 12.26, flood damage prevention. The board will recall I was before you some weeks ago with this item. We had some discussion, and it was tabled for the purpose of reviewing some of the new maps and looking at the actual proposed ordinances and those changes. So we've given the presentation. We can give it again if it's the board's pleasure. We have examples up on the wall of the old FEMA map versus the new, and they look a lot different. But if you look at them, by and large, they're really not that different. They're better maps because they show topography and buildings and all that kind of stuff, so it's easier to figure out where you are in the world. But the actual areas are very similar. They're not a lot of changes.
Can you tell us what you're talking about there?
Sure. And we want to try this? This sounded like it was going to take off in the wind, so I'm not sure.
I just saw one. Did you have that, Mommy? The pointer? The red pointer?
I got it.
Ah!
Oh, Malcolm.
Malcolm, come on up here and save me. Malcolm McDonald, our county surveyor, who's spearheading this effort. And maybe you could explain what, if any, differences that are occurring on this map.
Well, the map on the right here, this is the 1985 firm maps. And basically, they've taken a larger area and divided into the zones and as such, where the new 2010 maps have reduced the size of coverage to give a better detail of the flood zones and as such.
So on the old one, I'd have to kind of go and there's like sub areas where you have to go and figure out. And I would have to find township range, section numbers, and try to figure out where something was in the world, and then run it by the county surveyor to make sure they agree. Because it's very common that we get floodplain information all the time, from realtors to homeowners. You know, it affects people. It's it's policy driven for their insurance and all that kind of thing. So you can see now, you can pretty much just go to the location. But in the old maps, you had to do a township range and then get people to agree that you were in the right spot. So,
What's the difference
Can you
on the
focus that a little better? I can't see, even my bifocals.
Those are your zones.
Is that better?
This area, without going more, looking at the map, Supervisor Alba would be a specific, maybe a studied area showing the 100-yard